You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتكلم من هناك في شوارزنيجر جول.
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today, Friday, August 25th. Duane, it's the last day before our summer vacation. Once a year, we take a week or a little bit more off to recharge the batteries before we start, season 2 of Soccer Today.
Precisely. Is it season 2 or season 3 or season 6? It doesn't matter anyway.
Year 2. Let's put it this way, year 2.
Year 2, yes. And year 3 of the podcasting relationship. Going back to...
Actually, it's year 4.
Year 4, good God. All right, where does the time go? If anyone is really desperate to hear my opinions on football during that time, you can find me likely mumbling to myself on the St. Clair streetcar. St. Clair streetcar, I should say. So just ride it until you see me, and then just say Javinko at me, and I'll spout something. It'll be fine.
Yeah, just call Duane and talk to him for like 10 minutes, and you'll get him into podcast mode and be like, "So Duane, what do you think about TFC?"
There you go. Yes, that's a pretty broad question, but they are good. That would be my answer.
No,
anyway.
Exactly. Speaking of good teams, before we go on and recharge the batteries next to the beach, we'll talk about the Champions League draw today, and as well as our games of the week, of course. The weekend is busy and has a lot of standings implication in Major League Soccer and some important games in Premier League as well. Let's start with the Champions League draw. Yesterday, a draw is a draw. Never any surprises, but this seems to be like the most even groups I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's an overview, and maybe we can just go through them one by each after and sort of get our thoughts. But as a whole, maybe the Spurs group might be the group of death in there, and I think the group of life is definitely United, as always. They have horseshoe, as my grandfather used to say, Manchester United were born with a horseshoe up their ass. They are the luckiest team on earth. Sometimes you look at their draws going back 10 years, and yes, that's tinged with a little bit of bitter blue, but it's not just taking anything away from them to say that they've been very fortunate with the draws, and I think that they probably have been here as well. But
I think I just figured it out, Duane. Your grandfather was a blue mooner.
Maybe, yeah. He was a grandpa. He had some unique sayings. My mother used to always say that she was going to beat me with a rubber spoon too, was something which I don't know what that meant, and it probably would be inappropriate to say now. But there you go.
At least it's a rubber spoon. It's not that painful. It's gonna sting a little, but at least it won't leave too much of a mark.
I think that is actually what that saying is getting about. It's like, I'm going to beat you, but I'm going to do it with a little bit of love. So at any rate, highly inappropriate sayings for the win today.
No, exactly. Let's start with Group A. Benfica, Manchester United, FC Basel, and Laramee, CSKA Moscow. Let's start with, off the top of our head, the top 2 of these 4 teams. Would it be, if it goes chalk?
Yeah, that's, ultimately, as much as this group is a pretty light touch for United, they're not going to like the trip to Moscow. But they're definitely the favorite here. So let's just put that one out of the way. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with the fact that United, in particular, in the form they are to start the season, has to be considered the far away, 16 points or better favorite in this group. But the number 2 in this is a little tougher to look at it, and it will be interesting to see, where those next 3 spots shake out, because one of them is going on to the round of 16, the other is is going on to the Europa League, where they'd be an interesting club in there as well. I tend to say Benfica, they're the higher seed, but Basel has shown in the past that they are a tough team, and the Swiss League has pulled upsets in the past. In fact, they pulled upsets over United in the past. Siska is always a tough trip. They are definitely probably the 4 team in here, but I could see them sneaking up for sure and challenging for that 3 spot. It's a fairly even group after United. It's a 1 and then the rest group, but certainly kind of some intrigue about who claims that second spot there, Kevin.
Group B with 2 big teams, 2 powerhouse, and 2 regular team in the group. Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain. I was playing FIFA last night doing, everybody plays with Barcelona or Madrid. I have a feeling starting in the next few weeks, a lot of people are going to play with PSG.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a contrarian. I never play with the good big teams because what's the fun in that? But maybe I should because I'm terrible at it.
I'm just tired of playing against Barcelona, so at least now it'll be PSG. But Bayern Munich, PSG, Anderlecht from Belgium, and Celtic from, of course, the Scottish Premier League.
Yeah,
top 2, Bayern and PSG. It's like, come on, is there a better sure shot in the entire Champions League than Bayern Munich and PSG moving out of the group?
Yeah, the interest there, Anderlecht is they're solid in Belgium, but they're not necessarily going to reach up and reach those heights. This is a top-heavy group, as you say, PSG and Bayern. The interesting thing there will be to see which one of those groups, or which one of those teams, finishes first, and Bayern Munich will be the favorite because of their past history. So, look, for Celtic, I think, if you're a Celtic fan, I know we have a lot of Celtic listeners in this, that this is a lot of people still hold that. They have Scottish heritage or what have you, and they're either Celtic or Ranger fans or maybe another Scottish team. But we have a lot of Scottish heritage listeners out there. So we'll talk a bit about Celtic. And, the victory for them is making it. It's for monetary reasons, for just prestige reasons, for giving them something to look forward to this season reasons, because we all know that they're going to win the Scottish title basically by January, right?
I was probably going to say by default, but yeah.
Yeah. So look, for them, I think this is a near perfect group because honestly, let's say you put them into Group A, they're still probably not going to finish top 2 in that group, and they have less interesting teams coming in. This one I think is good. They have a chance to get third because they could challenge Anderlecht up for the third spot. I think that is possible, not unreasonable. And they get 2 really big teams coming in, and that's something I think that's probably a win for them.
For sure. And Anderlecht is a better team than we anticipate. When we think about the Belgian league and we think about Belgium team in the Champions League, it's been a long time since one has been good. But Anderlecht, if you're looking at their recent history, have been able to be performant, especially in Europa League. So it's basically that group B. The question is, who's going to be the Europa League team and between Anderlecht and Celtic? And that's the big question in that group. Yeah,
precisely. And I think Celtic's probably going to finish fourth, to be honest with you. But nonetheless, the victory, as I said, is in them getting there. So, yeah. Shall we move to group? Well, who do you think is going to win the group? I think Bayern, but do you think PSG has a chance?
I think PSG will win this one. I think PSG will want to show their new arsenal. And not saying Arsenal as in the team in England, but Arsenal as in their stock of weapons. And I think PSG will want to be very that game between Bayern Munich and PSG at Parc des Princes will be on September 27th. It's going to be, it's going to be a great moment for PSG. And it's the first game at home as well for PSG in this year's Champions League. It'll be the first time Neymar plays in Champions League for PSG. I kind of have a feeling they want to make that game a statement game. So September 27th, PSG Bayern Munich, one of the first games we have on the docket in the group stage. I think it's going to be a statement. So PSG will win the group for me.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so we'll move to Group C.
Group C.
Chelsea. Sorry, I was going to read it.
Go ahead.
Chelsea, Atleti, Roma, and You go ahead.
Karabag?
Karabag.
A team from, wait, is that Estonia? No, what's
No,
that
it's
flag?
they're from Azerbaijan. The one
Azerbaijan.
from the
Yeah,
stand.
that is Azerbaijan.
Yes,
That is Azerbaijan.
yes, Azerbaijan. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so
They
that
are
team
the first
finishes
team from
fourth.
Azerbaijan to
So that team finishes fourth.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, very likely. They are, again, like Celtic. The victory is in the making. They're the first team from Azerbaijan to qualify to the group stage. So that is something that's going to be of great pride to them. Obviously, the trip's not going to be easy for these clubs. It never really is when you go into those stands. But and I'm sure that's exactly what Chelsea and them, they look at that and they go, oh God, there. But and not really easy for the fans either. I don't know how many direct flights there are, so they might. I can see them stealing one win of their 3 home games or something like that, because it is a tough trip, and some of these, especially when you get near the end and maybe one of those clubs is already qualified or assured qualification, they might bring a lesser group in there, so that could make things interesting. But yeah, you're looking at top 3 here, and I can't, as much as Chelsea. Maybe on paper, some people might think that they're the favorite in here.
Well,
Not
Atletico.
for me.
No,
Atleti is.
Yeah, Atleti will win the group, in my opinion. But Chelsea is second. It's going to be the battle between Chelsea and Roma to see who stays in the Champions League. Roma ain't your big brothers, Roma. Totti, well, he's retired. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds in the Champions League. How Chelsea or Roma will get that second spot in the group.
Well, whether Xhaka can continue his form from last year, I mean, he was remarkable in Serie A last year, and just it was hard for some of us who watched him play consistently. Well, it isn't because he has such talent, but if he can get rolling and get scoring at the level that he was last year at a championship level, which is another step up, then certainly I would give Roma a chance to challenge Chelsea for that too, or Atleti for that second spot. But I do think that it probably will be Chelsea and Atleti that go through in this group, and that's going to be, a tough slug for Chelsea in that next round, because it's going to likely mean the round of 16 if they do finish second, because they will very likely draw one of the big boys because of the restrictions, and you can't draw someone from your own country in the round of 16. So that'll be an interesting round of 16 draw for the second place finisher there, and for the second place finisher in the PSG Bayern Munich draw. That'll be the one everyone's trying to avoid.
Group D, Juventus, Barcelona, Olympiacos, and Sporting Portugal, Sporting Lisbon. So those 4 teams, Olympiacos seems to be the outlier here, with Sporting Lisbon maybe the weakest of the top 3 teams here. So Juventus, Barcelona, interesting that they find themselves in the same group. Juventus eliminating Barcelona last year in the quarterfinals.
Quarters, yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so Juventus, Barcelona, the rematch. Again.
No, fair enough. And that is the marquee game here. And look, I mean, it doesn't take a brain search to figure out, or a football expert for that matter, to figure out who the top 2 teams in this group are. Now, there is a lot of talk. I've been listening to a lot of Serie A previews lately, and a lot of people are suggesting that Juventus is on the going down the hill right now, not up the hill. So there's some suggestion that they are not necessarily, or they might be challenged in Serie A by the likes of Milan or Roma or whoever. But we should have a Serie A preview sometime soon. But at any rate, the 1-2 is pretty obvious there, as much as both Juventus, and we've talked a lot in recent days about Barcelona's struggles, but that's a pretty nice draw for them. Olympiacos is always a decent team at this level, Sporting as well. Both of those 2 teams will probably fight each other for that Europa League spot, and both will go in with a chance to go deep in that competition when they return in January. But I do think that it's probably hugely unlikely that either of the big boys in this group fall out.
No, exactly. And again, the big question here is, can Olympiacos qualify for the Europa League? So can they get a few results here and there, and can they win against Sporting? Basically, those 2 games, the Olympiacos home and away versus Sporting, will determine who finishes third. So, because, well, you're going to lose the other 2 teams, the other 4 games are, so against the other 2 teams. So between Olympiacos and Sporting, who wins the home and away series?
Yeah, precisely. And that will be intrigue there. And, as someone who's a bit of a Europa League geek, I do sometimes enjoy watching those third place battles, and I think that they do matter. We've seen clubs like Manchester United last year use it to their advantage to get to the Champions League if you can win the thing. All right, Kevin, shall we move to a group? Yes. What group are we on? We're on group E. All right, you go ahead.
Spartak Moscow, Sevilla, Liverpool, and Maribor, a team from Turkey, if I'm not mistaken. Slovenia, yes, not Turkey at all. So those teams, Sevilla, Liverpool kind of gets a lucky draw here, where teams that are like similar to Liverpool in their own leagues. So it's kind of a group of like third and fourth in leagues.
Yeah, well, they drew. There were two balls in that pool of champions that a lot of people would have wanted from a competitive standpoint, and that was the Ukrainian and the Russian leagues, which were kind of the easiest touches, and we'll get to the Ukrainian one next. But Spartak is about. People are going to. I listened to, just by happenstance, folks. I'm not this much of a geek. I listened to a Russian league preview yesterday, so I have a bit more of
Duane, come on, get out there. I'm just kidding.
Spartak is a couple years ahead of schedule. They sort of were an upset winner of the Russian Premier League last year. They started their season pretty slow too. They've had their two derbies already, the Moscow derbies, and although there's about 16 Moscow derbies, but they're big two that they like, which is Dinamo and Ziska, and they lost both of those. So this is a club that's probably a little ahead of schedule. That kind of was an upset champion last year from one of the weaker leagues in the champion seeds. So yeah, you're absolutely right that Liverpool got a very lucky break there. Sevilla got a lucky break too, and I actually would tag this might be the time that Sevilla can get up and get the win a group. Liverpool in Europe. I don't know if they have the defensive fortitude to survive, but they should, to thrive, I should say. But I do think they'll survive this and get around a 16 matchup. I do think that's probably their ceiling in this competition, especially if they finish second in the group. I mean, I can't see Liverpool playing a Real Madrid or something and doing very well at all, just because of their defensive fragilities. But I do like the Sevilla team. I have for a while, the way that they played in that qualifying round. I mean, they gave up some goals too. We both watched and talked about that game, but they're a solid team. They've won that. There's those Europa League titles. I don't think they're going to slip down to the Europa League. That might be something that might not benefit them, because it's they're going to have to earn the Champions League berth through the league. But I like that Sevilla team, and I think that they're probably the favorite in that group. And I'll tag Liverpool to nick out probably Spartak for that third spot, or for the second spot, I should say.
And if Sevilla goes on to make it out of the group stage, let's not forget that they were only in by one goal. It was that close against Besikor from Turkey. They almost got the job done against Sevilla. In the second leg, the comeback, it almost happened. So let's not forget how sometimes the difference between just being in the quote-unquote Champions League, because playoffs kind of is in, but it's not, and how close it is sometimes to just make it in to eventually be in the quarterfinals. And we've seen teams make it in by the skin of their teeth and finding a way to get out of the groups because of a lucky draw. So Sevilla got a lucky draw. You're right.
Yeah, precisely. All right, let's move on to the next group.
You go this one.
All right. Shakhtar from Ukraine, Napoli from Italy, Feyenoord from Holland, and what's this club? Never heard of them. Oh, Manchester City is in there as the 2 seed in this group.
You know what I was thinking?
I'll get your opinion first.
If this was the 70s, this group would be cracking. If this was like 1973, Feyenoord would be like one of the best teams ever. Napoli with Maradona and, well, the other two teams.
Yeah, well, and City was pretty good in the early 70s. Yeah, they would have titled that, but it is. Well, 74 was their last.
Wasn't it like
before they won?
Best never played City, right? He played Chelsea and United.
Yeah.
Who was it? Anyways, I forget. Doesn't matter. But yeah, the Shakhtar Donetsk is the champion of Ukraine, the most famous Ukrainian team. Well, let's put it this way. That's where Shevchenko went back to finish his career with Donetsk. That was maybe the best stadium in Ukraine. I remember the Euro few years ago. Seems like forever now, and how beautiful those games in that stadium was. Shakhtar Donetsk is, well, year in, year out, at least in that stage. And they usually get booted out as well.
Yeah, look, I have a lot of time for Napoli to get specifically about this group. I have a lot of time for Napoli, and that was my initial thought when I saw the group. I was doing some work. There was some manually intensive work yesterday, so I wasn't following the group. I wasn't following the draw as it happened, so I did at one point take a 2-minute break just to see what City drew. And my initial instinctive reaction was like, okay, Napoli is going to be hard, but they absolutely have no excuse not to qualify out of that group. And I still maintain that. And because of how difficult that round of 16 draw is going to be if you finish second in these groups, and that's simply because there are a few groups out there, 3 groups out there that have really tough number 2s coming out. And we're going to talk about one at the end here in a minute. We've talked about 2 of them already. So you do not want to finish second, because basically the English teams, if they do finish second, are very likely to draw one of those 3 teams just because of the odds involved at that point, right?
Just because they can't draw each other in the round of 16. Yeah. So that's why the odds becomes from 1 of
1 and 8 to
1 of 5.
1 and 4, yeah, 4, exactly.
Yeah. So no,
depends on how it shakes out, clearly, but yeah, it's very, you're looking at.
It's going to be Barcelona or Real Madrid like usual.
Yeah, you're going to have a tough touch, which you have to beat them eventually, and that's the whole theory. But you'd rather beat them later than earlier. Anyway, so is City the favorite of this group? Probably, but
yeah,
their history in Europe is their history in Europe is it's not as bad as people think. Because they look at the money and there's this expectation that they instantly will start to win. Like, oh, if you're going to spend all that money, you got to win. And PSG has the same sort of expectations placed upon them and the same sort of reactions when they don't. The truth is, it's very difficult to close the gap on the old money. It really is. I think that we're 10 years into this now, though, and City has got to the point now where they can't, say they're a new team and they have to learn Europe and things like that. They've been to Europe for basically a decade now. They need to do something, and they have been to the semifinals of the Champions League. They beat PSG along the way in that, the Nouveau Money Derby. So, look, to me, they got to win this. And there's a bit of sort of a throwback in this too, from a City perspective. And I realize I'm talking a lot about them, but clearly the club that I know the most about in this. Their very first experience in the Champions League involved a group to Napoli, and Napoli was the team that pushed them out, that pushed them down to the Europa League, made sure that they didn't qualify out of the group stage. And I can still distinctly remember that first trip in to Serie A. And this is, we're still talking about, for City fans, we were all, virgins basically, where we were about the Champions League proper. Any of us that were watching around that day were probably not old enough to remember City playing in Europe in the 70s and 80s, but it's just, I can remember the scenes and the atmosphere and just how difficult it was to play down there. So I fully, as a City fan, respect Napoli and think that it will clearly be those 2 teams battling at the top. Feyenoord is the 4th place team in this group. Shakhtar is better than people give it credit for, but is probably a 3rd place team. So that's how I see it shaking out. And I think there's just no excuse for City to not get this done.
No, and just to finish on Napoli with Group F, it's a club that when you like the game itself, when you like when you're like me, when tactics, technique, like the implication and putting an idea that you create in your mind of what you want to do with that ball, when you implement it on a grass surface, like that aspect of the game, Napoli has always been able to get the most out of their players because they have to be at the top level of Serie A, like they have been over the last few years. They had to build that core of players, the handshakes. He's like the best example for me. A player that it's not about the money. He could have gone somewhere else a long time ago and get that payday. But the game is more important to him, and he knows that value and that relationship with the supporters and that way he plays. He knows he can take advantage of Napoli and the way they want to play. So that is interesting too. So if you don't have a Serie A team, Napoli could be your designated choice because of their history, because of how they usually decide to play as well. It's usually eye-pleasing.
they got a bit of chip on their shoulder that Napoli always has too, because they're in the south, right? And there's that perception in Italy that the south is viewed as hicks and so on and so forth. So they kind of play proudly as representatives of the south, and that's something there. As a City fan, and last thought on this, then we'll move on to Group G, is that I'm happy with this draw beyond the fact that it's winnable. It's also interesting to me that there's, Napoli, as I said, I enjoy watching them. And I enjoy the atmosphere in that stadium. So watching that away leg will be fun. And I'll also probably watch the other games in this group more closely than I would otherwise. Right. So just seeing those will be nice. And the other two teams, City hasn't played them before, whereas the last couple draws they've got have been the same damn teams. That was the most frustrating part of all. It's
always
okay,
Barcelona. It's always
they had Bayern Munich twice. It was terrible. But at any rate, all right, this is Group G.
Group G, Monaco, Porto Monaco as the champions, seeded number 1. Yes, Monaco will not repeat this year though. Monaco, Porto, with Canadian contact, Atiba Hutchinson,
Yes.
which in a group that, maybe they have a shot to finish second. Besiktas third, and Leipzig, RB Leipzig, Red Bull Leipzig in fourth.
Yeah, look, and this is probably the most even of all the groups in terms of I can make an argument for all 4 of those teams winning it. And Monaco is not going to be as good for sure.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if this was last year's Monaco, they would be the faraway favorite. But they are still going to be decent. Porto is always solid in these competitions. Besiktas is, I think, underrated. The Turkish league is generally underrated, although they are in tough, I think. But they're probably the least likely to win it. And Leipzig is likely my favorite.
And it could be all or nothing too with Leipzig, right? I agree with you. This group is not decided in advance like other groups, because of how Besiktas is sometimes, like last year, was on the cusp of getting even further into competition, and then the game turned on its head. You never know what can happen in that type of group. Leipzig could be like 2 results, either from making it in the group or even being booted out of Europe altogether. What if Besiktas and Porto go on a run? Leipzig could find himself out of the Europe altogether. So no, that group is unpredictable, and I think it will be one that we keep an eye on, because this might be the closest group we have in years.
Yeah, real precisely. You kind of do tend to have groups each year that are pretty even, and this one I think is particularly so. So I'm interested to do that. If I have to peg it now, I will actually say Leipzig and Monaco will be the 2 to get out, with Porto probably getting third and Besiktas finishing fourth. But I could make the argument, as I said, any different direction from that. And Monaco, we're going to have to watch to see how much they've changed from last year. Clearly, they well have, but whether they're 10% worse, or whether they have some kids in the system that they're going to bring through that are as good, you never know. And it'll be a fun group to watch that way. And I think that whoever finishes third in this group is going to have a great chance to go deep in the Europa League as well, because they're all decent teams. None of them are really exceptional teams in terms of the world level, but they're all very good teams that are going to be going to make for some very competitive games.
And
all right, Kevin,
to finish on a group stage for the Champions League, Group H, the group of hell, maybe. I don't know. If you're Apoel Haifa, this group is terrible. If you're Madrid, it's like, it's just other teams. We're the best anyways. Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, Tottenham Hotspurs, and Haifa Apoel.
Yeah, well, and look, the Cyprians are in for the trips. Let's not kid ourselves here. Although they did make it out one year, 7 or 8 years ago, they qualified to the round of 16. That was quite actually, I believe they qualified for the quarterfinals in memory serves. They made an upset there.
But they had a way different group than this year. Like, they had no Madrid in their group.
Yeah, look. And hey, good for their fans. I'm sure that's exactly what they're thinking of right now. Is like they probably are a little disappointed they didn't get an easier third place team, but they got 3 damn good teams coming in, and a lot of world class players that are going to be playing out there. The question here: Real Madrid's going to win the group. This is a tough group for them, and they probably like that because they like to be pushed a little bit, and they are going to rise up to that occasion. I have no doubt about that. They will win this group. Who between BBB and Spurs gets out? That's going to be an interesting question. It's hard to me. I look at it, and maybe this is me being too biased about Spursy things that happen. but I think Dortmund is probably going to finish second in there. But, Tottenham's pretty good. And if they could figure it out, you never know. And it is an interesting group for second there for sure. But, yeah, I would call this the group of death. And whoever finishes third in that one might not only go deep in the Europa League. I'll go so far as to say whoever finishes third in this group is going to be the favorite to win the Europa League.
Very, very interesting. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the games of the week, and we'll say goodbye before our vacation.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Duane, it's Friday as well. And
thank you, Grant.
Thanks, Grant. There's a buzz in North America and the world right now. Who's winning tomorrow night?
Who's winning tomorrow? Oh, yeah. Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I don't know. Our parents had Ali Frazier, Foreman Frazier, Foreman Ali. We get Mayweather McGregor.
Well, this is more like Ali and the Japanese wrestler.
Inoki. This is Inoki Ali. That's funny. Ali on his back just kicking.
Yeah. It's the worst fight of all time.
Terrible fight. Inoki just... There's a good book actually written by... what's his name? I forget his... Anyways, there's an MMA writer that wrote a book, Ali Inoki, and he explains all the surroundings of that fight. Quite interesting, and there's going to be books written on Mayweather McGregor, that's for sure.
Look, if McGregor can get a win, it's going to be quickly on that, since it is Friday and we're going away for a week. If McGregor can get the win, then I think that there is... I don't know if there's a win-win. I think what it will do is it'll make the MMA community very proud.
Yeah, and there'll be a rematch, and then Floyd will dominate and be the real Floyd, and everybody's going to make even more money because, well, seems like the fix is in.
Yeah, and look, I listen to a lot of, I consume a lot of media, as you well know, and I do consume some regular sports media too. And when I hear them talk about this fight, it's usually, old white guys, right? And which I shouldn't talk. I'm going to be an old white guy soon enough. But old white guys just really hate this fight. They go out of their way to bash it at all accounts. It's just a savage sort of they completely just dismiss it. So even if McGregor wins it, he's not going to get credit. Like anyone who thinks that this is going to rise MMA up in the eyes of people that view it as blood sport now, as human cockfighting now, they will not change their opinion one iota. So it's really just about making money for these guys, and it's a spectacle, and it's going to be fun to watch, I think. And or it could be terrible to watch. It might actually be terrible to watch, but it will be fun to watch until it starts for sure. And then after that, we'll see. But that's what I think on that one, Kevin.
Speaking of terrible to watch, there's a few matchup in the Premier League this week. Huddersfield, Southampton. Yeah, Huddersfield was performing great so far. We'll see if they can continue against Southampton. Crystal Palace, Swansea, Watford, Brighton, Newcastle, West Ham. West Ham, Chicharito opened his West Ham account. That's interesting. Last week, Bournemouth, Man City, Duane, in the morning tomorrow.
Yeah, one day I would love to play at 10 o'clock on a Saturday. This is the bane of my existence. It's always at any rate, so I'll be up at 7:30 watching that one. I ain't going to the pub though. It'll be in my bedroom. But nonetheless, it's interesting start of the season for City in terms of they've had some lighter touches, and the Everton game was a tough one, obviously. But having two teams that I think most people assume will be bottom of the table to start gives you a chance to sort of round the form. So that's a decent one. But if I'm honest, the game that I'm looking forward to, well, not looking forward to, but it's most interesting, is quite obviously United Leicester tomorrow. Leicester, I don't know. like, I just don't know what to think. They were so, obviously 2 years ago winning the damn thing. And then last year doing everything they can to get their legendary coach fired. It's just such a bizarre club that it's hard to really peg exactly what they're going to be this year. So that, considering United starts, is a very intriguing game on the weekend, and clearly the game of the weekend for me on this one, Kevin.
There's a few games on Sunday as well, and let me just turn the page here. Of course, my computer's. Let me give one second.
West Brom Stoke, I got him here.
Yeah, you got him.
You got
Chelsea, West Brom Stoke, Chelsea Everton, of course, is very, very interesting as well. Chelsea needs to not necessarily turn things around, but the defeat in the opening day of the Premier League this year, it's still in the back of people's mind, and they want to have a great performance. And Everton's been performing out of their minds, so Chelsea at home against Everton, it's a good one. And Liverpool-Arsenal a little later too.
Yeah, and look, I will watch that Liverpool-Arsenal game for sure, and I will probably adventure to the pub for that one, and then make it my appetizer before the real rivalry game of the weekend, which of course will happen after. That is, of course, if I'm not in a car, which I think I'm not going to be. I'm more and more leaning that way because I need to save my money to travel in the playoffs. But nonetheless, so yeah, it's a nice little appetizer there. Chelsea Everton's a decent game too. I like the Sunday games. They're so relaxing in the sense that you can kind of just chill out and watch them all day because they spread them out, and that it's a fun couple double headers for us to watch on the weekend. And no Monday games, so thank God for that, because the Monday games are the bane of my existence as well. Because after a weekend of doing nothing but watching football, sometimes you need to get some work done on Mondays. And Christ, when they put City on there, oy.
What?
Anyway.
You don't like Monday Night Football?
Yeah, well, it's not Monday Night Football here.
Monday afternoon football, math. Let's call it math. Monday afternoon football.
Well, it often has to be what gets sacrificed in my viewing, because if it's during a Champions League week, you're going to watch the Champions League games. So I can't prioritize a Monday Premier League game unless it involves City. So I often miss those ones.
Imagine when there's a Monday night game, Monday afternoon game, then you have the Champions League week, and Thursdays are Europa. So it's basically Friday. It's times our MLS game on Friday night. Jeez. When does it stop? When does it stop? It never stops.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't at all, which is why we go daily. When we first talked about going daily, we were like, I don't know, maybe we might have some days that are tough to fill, but no, it really doesn't. Like, we haven't even touched news today. Like, I don't know how much news there is. I didn't even look at news because I knew that the show was pretty much made.
We have a daily show, and we sometimes can't even, we can't keep up with the news. Never mind, we can't. We have to pick and choose.
Well, yeah, we could go an hour, but I mean,
we could go two.
We
could go two, but then we need to really to get paid.
Well, yeah, if anyone wants us to go two, hell, I go three. But I'll tell you what, if anyone out there wants to sponsor us for $100,000 a year combined between the two of us,
we'll do a 3-hour daily show at Carlton and whatever you want. We'll do it.
Yeah, we'll do it live for $50,000 each a year. How's that, folks? So there's your challenge out there. Patreon.com/soccer today. /Sports Podcasting Network, right?
And Sports Podcasting Network at gmail.com. But speaking of never stopping, Major League Soccer as well continues this weekend, and you have a few interesting matchup teams. Some teams suffered a interesting defeat this week, like Atlanta, and they have a chance to turn it around and beat Philly this weekend already. DC, New England, Orlando, Vancouver, Columbus, Dallas, Chicago, Minnesota. But this is just to lay the foundation for the day of the week, and that's Sunday. 3 big rivalry game, not at the same time. You could watch all 3 back to back to back. Montreal, Toronto, Galaxy, the Earthquakes, and Seattle, Portland.
Well, you're drinking a Heineken, obviously, right?
Well, I guess you kind of have to because it's Heineken rivalry week. But I'm not a fan of skunks, so Heineken is not like my favorite.
Yeah,
that little smell, that little skunky taste. Nah, I'm not a fan.
It's those beers are funny in the sense that we view them as like so good over here. Like, well, some people do anyway, like, because they're European, right? But you go over to Europe and they're kind of viewed as the Budweiser over there. So, alas, there's a nice little blonde and there's Cause and Effect here in the city that I have a Nickelbrook Cause and Effect. That's my beer choice right now, or the Belgian Moon. So there you go. There's your beer. I like the Amsterdam Blonde as well, but that's kind of a long-term love affair, that one.
Yeah, I'm more of an IPA type of guy. I have to say Goose Island has been my go-to over the last few years. Honkers, Goose Island IPA. That's for my style. So we have that the Sunday, the 3 games, and tonight as well, the New York Derby.
Yeah, and that one has a lot of interest for TFC fans, obviously, because if TFC were to beat Montreal, and there's no sure thing there, I'm not suggesting that, but if they were to get the 3 points against Montreal and the Red Bulls were to take 3 points against NYCFC tonight, TFC will end the weekend 10 points up in the Supporters' Shield race, and that, I think, would almost be lights out, and that's something that would be something to celebrate for TFC fans. So they could have a good night in Montreal if that happens. But nonetheless, there's a lot to have to happen before that. There's no guarantee that the Red Bulls are going to beat NYCFC because NYCFC is for real, and there's certainly no guarantee that Toronto is going to beat the red hot Montreal Impact because Montreal Impact are red hot. How excited at scale 1 to 10 are you by that game now?
I'm very excited and bummed at the same time. It's the first game of the season where I can make it to the game, unfortunately. And it's like the most important one this year. And it always seems to be the case, right? It's karma. I got a chance to go to the All-Star game and see great games this season, but I'll miss my favorite one. No worries. DVR, and I do have friends in high places, and I will get my post-game audio for Sur la Transversale. Do not worry. So late Sunday night, you will get your post-game show still. But I am excited because it's not just an important game, not just a rivalry game. 2 teams that are hot, right? We talk about Montreal's 4 games in a row. We don't even talk about the streaks of Toronto because it's just normal that Toronto wins now weekly. So Montreal,
8 without a loss.
Exactly. So 8 without a loss, 4 in a row for Montreal, 4 wins. 2 teams that are hot. This does have some standings implication where Montreal, if they get that victory, that 5th in a row, they would find themselves outright in the playoffs if Atlanta slips once again. And hey, Phillies do, and Atlanta doesn't travel well. Terrible record on the road. Wouldn't be surprised if Philly gets the job done. So Montreal, and we'll know that. They will know before they play on Sunday. So it becomes very important. So for all those reasons, this game is a must-see. Like Stade Saputo, 4:30 on Sunday. It's going to be cracking.
And I know, there will be the away section's been sold out for a month now. I saw some people trying to scramble to find their way in the other day. There's some, people are buying tickets at other parts of the stadium from Toronto to try and sneak into the away section. I don't think there's going to be a lot of option even to do that. So it's going to be a cracking atmosphere. Obviously, the last time these 2 teams played was the Canadian Championship final game, which we all know how that ended, and it's hard to beat those 2 games for atmosphere as well. So fun times, and 2 more times to go this year, maybe 4 more times. We'll never know. We won't know till it happens. Well, 5 more times, including the game on Sunday. So these 2 teams, I think, and we're biased, but to me, Seattle-Portland has a lot of color involved in that derby. There's more history in this one. We don't need to go over why again. There just really is. It goes back, as long on the soccer side and longer on other sports sides. So, and even longer than that on the cultural, political side. So this is a unique rivalry.
It's a derby 400 years in the making.
Yeah, well, or I always make the joke. It goes back to the battle, to 1060 or whatever. If you want to go way back when to the last time England was invaded, if you want to go back to England, France.
The Channel War? Talking about the English Channel War? Jeez, that's a reference.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a very long, old, lot of stuff going on now with that one, as we've talked about many times before. But unfortunately, we won't be able to break it down because Kevin is going on a well-deserved vacation. But if you don't want to hear me scream on the St. Clair streetcar line, which is very difficult to say on a radio type scenario. But if you want to hear me scream out the St. Clair streetcar line, I still said it wrong. I'm going to stop now.
Streetcar? Yeah. But if
St. Clair streetcar.
But Duane, you can always do a live podcast with your phone on social media. So you can just open up Periscope and you can always do your daily thoughts if you like.
Yes, I could Periscope for people if they really want. Yeah.
5-hour Periscope from the pub.
That would get interesting towards the end.
No, exactly.
Or
You
less
mentioned
interesting.
the playoffs for a second. Dates are out, and we know that my MLS Cup will be December 9th. And will it be a cold MLS Cup, Duane? Or will it be once again maybe in Toronto?
The likelihood the MLS Cup is going to probably be in whoever is hosting in the East, which means it would very likely be in a northern climate. There's no doubt about that. I can't see. I think between NYCFC, Toronto FC, and Chicago, I think you probably have your likelihood 3 MLS Cup hosting venues. And if you want to look at a team that's hot, that's the Montreal for a second. They're the hot team right now too. So that might be the one exception to that. And if you're an Impact fan, maybe you might want to start looking at the Western standings and dreaming a little bit, because that would be the one area that you might be able to see a West Coast team finish ahead. So Impact fans will want to get as many points as they can, not just make the playoffs if they were to sneak in there. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that you're going to need to wear your parka for MLS Cup final this year.
Yeah, your parka is an understatement. Wear your Canada Goose. But to finish the show before our vacation, Duane, what are you surprised most about over the last few weeks? It was a busy time in MLS. It was a very, very busy time. And we have Toronto dominating. And you mentioned it was one of the first time this midweek where it kind of felt like the result was known before the end of the game because of how just non-threatening other teams feel against Toronto. So how does it feel to be first in the league? I've never had that feeling. I don't know how it feels.
It feels, yeah. I mean, it was predetermined, and I've never seen teams as to express that further. They played scared. Like Philly came in and played timid and scared, and they just didn't think that they had a chance to win. And if you don't think you have a chance to win, you don't. And it was clear as day. And once Suminko got that goal, bang on. It feels pretty good, obviously. And I think TFC fans, whether you like TFC or not, you have to take a step back and objectively look at what those fans that stayed there, and there were a lot that did. I know a lot of them that stayed for the 10 years and stayed for all those bad years. You don't have to necessarily feel good about them, but you got to recognize that they've earned it, and they have. So it has been fun like that. There are 26,000 on a Wednesday wasn't happening during the bad days. So there are obviously some, call them bandwagoners, call them fair weather, call them whatever you want, but that's going to happen with any team. And it's exciting to go to BMO Field nowadays. Just the atmosphere is spectacular every game because people go in. It's like the early days again, because they go in ready to have fun, but also they go in with an expectation. They're not only going to have fun, they're going to win. And that's something that we've never had here before, because we were either having a party and enjoying ourselves, or we were having a party and not enjoying ourselves. And then suddenly we have it both ways now. So that's a good thing. And it's a lot of fun. What surprised me actually is Montreal's turnaround. I honestly, after that New York game, I didn't think they had a chance. I thought they were done when they lost 4-1. They proved me wrong, and good for them.
Yeah, those 4 wins in a row were desperately needed, and is a character return, right? It is literally a team that maybe in the standings they weren't rock bottom because, DC. But after that loss, it seemed bleak. The playoffs seemed far away. And that gap, even though we all knew Montreal would have a few games in hand, that gap seemed almost unsurmountable. And people were ready to count them out. They were like, one more loss and this thing's over. Well, that one more loss hasn't come yet. It could come on Sunday, but that 4-game win streak did give Montreal the only chance of making the playoffs of the team that weren't in it. Now they kind of are, and it depends on Atlanta and Columbus. But out of those 7 teams, it's pretty much for sure top 3 are making it. Rebels, we'll see. See if they're dropping more. Like tonight will be interesting. If they drop tonight and Montreal wins Sunday, they drop down too. So that's another question. The Rebels, they could slip out of the playoff if they're not careful. But Montreal is the only team that 2 weeks ago was outside of the playoff that still has a shot of making it. Like Orlando, downwards, they're done and they're almost conceding it. There's a gap of 5 points now. So 5 points with just not even 10 games for the most part, 9 games for the most part left to play. It is looking like Montreal, Columbus, Atlanta, and Red Bulls will fight for those last 3 playoff spots.
Yeah, I think, truth be told, I think Columbus is if one team is going to fall that's in there right now, it might be the Crew. They have played 27 games, and they're on 1.44, which actually puts them below the red line when it comes to points per game. So that is the one team there that I think look like they're safe right now that might not be, because they're on 39 points, but points on the border, points in the pocket, right? So that is good for them that way. You're probably looking at 45, 46 points to be what that line's going to be. So that's kind of the race. Can the Impact find, 3 wins and a draw the rest of the way? You'd think they probably can. So we'll see.
Exactly. And this Sunday will be quite a soccer day for Major League Soccer. I am ready. My DVR is ready. And now we'll watch all those games and we'll talk about that and everything that happens in the next 9 days, 10 days. We'll be back around August 6th. And
September 6th.
I'm sorry. Yeah, September 6th. Yeah, right. Because we can't go back in time yet. So yeah, that'll be fun.
We don't have a TARDIS yet.
Yeah, no, that'll be fun. Dwayne, last week's shows were terrible. Let's go back in time and redo it. Why not?
Maybe we do it already. You don't know.
Maybe we do. Maybe it's just like the same day over and over and over again, like Groundhog Day. Anyways.
How do you think Toronto's doing so well? I just keep having them replay the games.
I'm just watching the same game. Like, I know. I need a vacation. Can't wait to visit the beach. And that starts next week. So during our vacation, we'll try to put a few best of shows here and there. Our archives are open and you can always get your fix on sportspodcastingnetwork.com. But for the next 10 days, Duane and I are recharging our batteries. I'll work on some new audio. We're going back with year 2 of Soccer Today. And until then, you can always follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute, where you can get his opinion on about everything related to the world of soccer. And as well, during our vacation, he will continue to watch soccer and talk about it on his social media, like always, at 24th Minute. And myself at Kev Laramee for the few times I will be close to cell connection. And as always, until next time, I'm Kevin Laramee, and for Duane Rollins, have a great soccer.